Hi, I'm Phil, and welcome to the Xbox Show.
What's up, everyone? Hello, and welcome to the Xbox Show podcast, episode 1. If you're finding us for the first time, that may be because this is our first podcast. And if you are a returning viewer and you have seen one of our older videos, maybe the Xbox Fan Fest video from LA last year, or the other unboxing and reviews for Xbox products, I really appreciate your support and I'm thankful you're here. If you're finding us for the first time, please consider subscribing to our channel. I'm trying to get traction on this podcast and hopefully I'll gain your support and be your favorite Xbox creator soon. Okay, without further ado, let me introduce myself. I am Abhishek. I go by @SugamPixels everywhere on Xbox, on YouTube, on Instagram, Threads, and even Twitter. Uh, uh, Feel free to follow me anywhere. Send a party invite if you see me online. Always happy to jump on a game of Halo or Apex or anything. Anything goes, actually. Anything on Game Pass. All right. So let's talk about this podcast. The aim of this podcast is to be the voice of the Xbox community. This is a podcast of the Xbox fam, for the Xbox fam, and by the Xbox fam. I'm hoping as the podcast grows and the viewership grows, I would be able to get a few interviews with uh, people in the gaming industry and grow this podcast with you guys. If you're listening to this podcast on YouTube, consider subscribing to our YouTube channel @SugamPixels. I would have a dedicated playlist dedicated to this podcast. It would be called the Xbox Show podcast, and it will just have all the podcast episodes. And then there is a second playlist called the Xbox Show that is just dedicated to the news, previews, vlogs from events, and stuff like that. But still focused on Xbox. If you prefer to listen to the podcast on audio, I will be posting the audio file onto Spotify, Apple Podcasts, Google Podcast, Amazon, and all the other podcast services out there. The audio podcast will be arriving a day later, so my target is to have a new episode every Friday on YouTube and every Saturday on the audio services. So that's all about the podcast, and yeah, please consider dropping a thumbs up, dropping a comment, and yeah, I'm pretty open to constructive criticism. So if you like my setup, don't like something about my setup, please let me know down in the comments and I'll try to improve them in the next episode. For the first episode, we're going to talk about Xbox on trial. The trial we're talking about, as all of us know, is the FTC versus Xbox trial that they're trying to get a PI to stop the Microsoft's vertical merger or acquisition of the Activision Blizzard uh, and King. So, as many of you might know, a little while earlier today, Xbox won that case and FTC's PI was denied. So, Xbox is going all the way. We are getting all of these new IPs under the Xbox brand now. We will have all of these fun contents maybe soon on Xbox Game Pass. But even other than that, we will not have to ever face like exclusivity clauses like the skins for Call of Duty that PlayStation had for the last few cycles. Uh, After this US win, this is the statement that was given out by Phil Spencer, head of Xbox or CEO of Microsoft Gaming. Today, a US District Court judge issued a decision denying the FTC's request for a preliminary injunction, which would have temporarily blocked our acquisition of Activision Blizzard in the United States. We are grateful. Upon review of the evidence and witness testimony, the court rejected FTC's claims that our acquisition would harm customers. So the evidence showed the deal is good for industry and that the FTC's claim about console gaming monthly game subscriptions and the cloud do not reflect the realities of the gaming market. If you have been following along this trial, you might have seen that FTC was really pushing hard on how Xbox might make Call of Duty exclusive and force players off PlayStation and make them buy Xboxes, which would not have been good for the competition. But Xbox is not planning to do anything of that sort. And they were also very adamant that Nintendo is not part of the console race, which was absurd. Like, it is the second most popular gaming device ever, and I'm not sure why FTC didn't want to see it in the console space, other than trying to just prove their point that Microsoft is going to become a monopoly, especially in the cloud market. And that was their play, that there is no other player and Microsoft will have a monopoly in the cloud. But then we do have Amazon Luna, we have GeForce Now in the US, and then there are multiple other smaller game streaming services all over the world. So it's not a monopoly by any aspect. But let's dive a little deeper and look at what Judge Corley said in this case. So Judge Corley mentioned that Microsoft's acquisition of Activision has been described as the largest in the tech industry, which is true. It's the largest gaming acquisition with $69 billion at stake, and hence it deserves scrutiny, and that scrutiny has paid off, is what Judge Crowley says, that they did the due diligence, and now she's very satisfied that this is not harming competition in any way. As the major thorn in this acquisition was Call of Duty, everyone was very worried about Call of Duty. So the second statements he made was Microsoft has committed in writing, in public, and in court to keep Call of Duty on PlayStation for 10 years on parity with Xbox, which was actually the first deal that Xbox presented to PlayStation, but they didn't really like it. They wanted all the Xbox, all the Activision games, and even all the Bethesda games. If you looked at the email that Jim Ryan sent to Phil, which is not great. All right. Moving on to the next point is Microsoft made an agreement with Nintendo to bring Call of Duty to the Switch. So it is expanding the player base and increasing competition in a way and not reducing it at all. And it has also entered several agreements to, for the first time. Yeah, it has reached several agreements for the first time to bring Activision content on other cloud gaming services. Like GeForce Now didn't have any Activision content, even Xbox content. So it's great for GeForce Now and Boostroid and all the other gaming services all around the world. Gaming streaming services, I mean. The court also found that FTC has not shown a likelihood it would prevail on its claim that a particular vertical merger in this specific industry may substantially lessen competition. So their main point was, if they make Call of Duty exclusive, people will have to switch to Xbox because a lot of players just play Call of Duty. But that's not the case. Xbox has committed to, in court, under oath, that they are going to provide Call of Duty on all of these other platforms. So uh, there is no case, and hence the PI is therefore denied. That's what Judge Corley said. And very soon after all of this, as we were hearing about this uh, court case, the decision from the Xbox versus FTC case, we hear on the other front that CMA is now willing to negotiate, and has CMA has asked Xbox to actually stop making going to that appeals tribunal. So for the UK, when Phil Spencer had this statement, we are turning our focus to the UK now. As you may know, a few months ago, the UK Competition and Market Authority, that is the CMA, recommended that the deal be prohibited. We disagree with CMA's concern and have challenged its decision on appeal. At the same time, however, we are considering how the transaction might be modified to address CMA's concern in any way that is acceptable to CMA, which is basically, the CMA's concern was cloud gaming. So I'm not sure how they are going to deal with xCloud there. Maybe xCloud just has the games that you buy and it's not available as a subscription. So you might lose access to Game Pass on the cloud in the UK if you live in the UK. But you will still have access to xCloud is my assumption, but we'll see what happens. So in order to prioritize work on potential options, Microsoft and Activision have agreed with the CMA that pausing the appeal now would be in the public interest, and both we and the CMA have made a joint submission to the competition appeal tribunal to this effect. What all of that means is basically it's an out of the court settlement now. Uh, they will it, the CMA gets a win that they are not folding and they're not just taking behavioral remedies, and then Xbox gets a win that they're able to acquire this huge studio that they are willing to spend $69 billion on. So that's all about the result of the trial. But this trial was really spicy. It gave us a lot of insight into the gaming industry, into Xbox, PlayStation, and Nintendo as a whole. So let's look at a few of the key findings, and let's start with the bombshell email of Jim Ryan that Microsoft decided to open their opening statement at the hearing with. So Jim Ryan has been very vocal. He has been saying all across at all these hearings that Microsoft might take Call of Duty exclusive, might make it exclusive. The PlayStation gamers will lose Call of Duty, making them switch to Xbox and hence lessening competition. But in a email sent internally, he clearly said that is Xbox's acquisition of Activision Blizzard is not an exclusivity play at all, because he knows that the economics don't really work out with the large costs that we are seeing with these large Call of Duty games. If Xbox removes Call of Duty from PlayStation, they're going to lose like uh, 2/3 of the revenue. They're not going to do that, and and they're bringing bigger. They're thinking bigger than that, and they have the cash to make moves like this. I've spent a fair amount of time with both Phil, Bobby over the past day, and I'm pretty sure we will continue to see Call of Duty on PlayStation for many years to come. So, as you can see in this email, Jim was pretty confident that Call of Duty is never going to go exclusive, and still he went all across the world in front of all these regulatory hearings, and he kept repeating that Xbox is gonna take that away. All he wanted to do was kill the deal, as Lulu mentioned in an email, like in a tweet a few months ago, that it is what he said. He's like, I don't want anything. I just want to block your deal. He said in a hearing, which is not great. Yeah, obviously he was trying to serve the interests of his company. He was trying to serve the interest of Sony, but that's not really. He was not speaking the truth. At the same time, Sony was also looking to acquire Bungie, so he also mentioned that we have some good stuff cooking. He said that he's not complacent, and I'd rather this hadn't happened, but we will be okay, and we'll be more than okay, because Jim knows that PlayStation is the king. They are the market leader. They control the market and almost everywhere except the US and maybe Brazil, where Xbox has a larger market share. Everywhere else across the globe, PlayStation has a larger market share, and this deal will actually help Microsoft maybe have a fighting chance in the race. But it's not like there will be lessening of competition in any way. So now Microsoft lawyers opened the case with this email and said, like, today showed Sony has known all along. We will stand by our promise to keep games on its platform and made clear its work to lobby against the deal is only to protect its dominant position in the market, which is true, right? PlayStation has a dominant position in the market. They can make all these fancy exclusive deals like the Final Fantasy ones, or even Call of Duty deals the marketing deals that gave them early access to Call of Duty, or it gave them player skins and stuff like that. And they have been debating, what if Xbox players get an exclusive Christmas skin and PlayStation don't? But you have been doing that all with this while. Uh, Microsoft never argued on that point that Sony has been doing this. Microsoft always agreed, we are going to do parity on Xbox, on PlayStation, everything is parity, and we're going to ship Call of Duty for the next 10 years at least. So that was the first email. But then let's go to Matt Booty's testimony. There were few really interesting details there as well. So Matt Booty, as many of you might know, is the head of Xbox Chem Studios, uh, and one of the major talking points of this entire trial was FTC trying to prove that Nintendo Switch shouldn't be considered part of the console market, and that it's a separate market. It's not does not compete with PlayStation and Xbox, which is very 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 different than what how Xbox wants to the the console space actually. So the question that FTC asked was like, how can you even play Call of Duty on Switch? And Matt Booty replied saying that Microsoft would have to adjust graphics and assets to run on a Nintendo platform. So obviously it's not going to be parity with all the graphical features that you'll see on PlayStation and Xbox, but it will be still be available on Switch. You can play maybe at a lower resolution, lower frame rate. We don't even know what it entails to make Call of Duty run on Switch. So we'll see when we go to it. Uh, Next revelation was that Matt Booty wanted to make Game Pass a moat that nobody else can attack. So he wanted to keep all the first party games exclusive to Game Pass, no other streaming services, nothing. And there was a very harsh emails going out from him. We are not putting our first party uh, we are not putting our first party IP on competing streaming or subscription services. No effing way. And they did actually pull all the Xbox Game Studio titles from GeForce Now so as to not compete with xCloud. And he mentioned that I would recommend that in absence of any other plans, we do the same for Bethesda titles. But the thing was, the GeForce Now actually just published everything without even trying to make a deal with Xbox, and that's why he was so annoyed with them. And actually till now GeForce Now didn't have any Bethesda content, any Xbox content, but now with this deal that GeForce Now and Microsoft signed, that Nvidia and Microsoft signed, I should say, is now they will have access to all the Xbox Game Studios game and Activision Blizzard games and Bethesda games. So this acquisition has really helped GeForce Now in a way. All right, moving on to the next point. I think then we have seen that while content is absolutely important to our strategy, really isn't a durable advantage, and others can enter a field and build a content library relatively quickly. So this was when he was asked like, why are you deciding to add all of this content now? You were very against adding all of this first party IP to competing platforms. So for that he mentioned that, okay, that was my understanding at that point, but today I don't think that's the way to go, because there are multiple factors. There's no durable advantage. There can be a third party that pops up, starts creating games, and it's a relatively short time if you're especially if you're doing double A games that are good, or even indie games that are good. You can capture the hearts and minds of people and they will follow you blindly. So that's all we learned from Matt Booty's uh, testimony. Another thing that was very, very interesting that we learned is Indiana Jones is an Xbox exclusive. We were still not sure if Indiana Jones was an Xbox exclusive. We heard that it's a case by case basis for everything Bethesda. So we were not sure. Is Elder Scrolls 6 an exclusive? Is any other games coming from Machine Games or like the next Wolfenstein? Are all of those exclusive? But we just learned that Indiana Jones, at least, is Xbox exclusive. This came in from Pete Hines, who was the head of uh, global publishing for Bethesda. So FTC emphasized that Microsoft locked all Bethesda games to Xbox and can do the same for Activision. Uh, but but then there are other things that we should consider. For example, Pete said that we would not be putting this game, which is Starfield, out in 9 weeks if we're supporting the entire additional platform. So if they were supporting Switch or even just PlayStation, they wouldn't be pushing this game out in 9 weeks. They might need more time. The game would have been delayed to like 24, or maybe end of 24. And signing this exclusivity, like making this Starfield a big exclusive, help them align the game and make the game very streamlined and focused, and then they could release it in a shorter time period. And Bethesda also liked the idea of removing the risk of the game developers and bringing it all to Game Pass. So as soon as they are on Game Pass, they have a set user base. A lot of people will just jump into the game, play the game, try it out, give it a go. And that really helps them have a set audience for all of their games, even the smaller scope games or large scope games. So it's really a good deal for them. And talking about Indiana Jones, Pete mentioned that Indiana Jones was supposed to be a multi console, and the deal that they signed with Disney initially was about multi console. And then that deal was amended after Microsoft's Bethesda acquisition. And FTC tried to use this as their as their main point going into the next sections, next days. They were debating that they did the same for Bethesda games. What's stopping them from doing the same for Activision? So, uh, what did we learn from Pete's Pete's testimony? That most of the maybe most of the Bethesda games are going to be exclusive now. And even though Phil said it is case by case, maybe it's just the multiplayer games that are going to stay multi-platform. All right, next was a bombshell that Pod could have actually skipped Xbox Series consoles at least. This came in when Sarah Bond, the head of Xbox Creator Experience, actually testified. They mentioned that Microsoft was forced to agree to a new revenue sharing deal with Activision to get the version of Call of Duty for launch on Xbox Series X and S. Uh, because Activision knew and Bobby Kotick knew that Call of Duty is essential and it has to launch on the platform. And even if they skipped Xbox, they would still get 2/3 or more of the revenue, anyways. So they really tried to push. And this came out as a redacted document that somehow got leaked or should have been redacted, and or the lawyer just misspoke. The general rule of thumb is the revenue sharing between the game publisher and Xbox is 70/30. 70% of all revenue goes to the publisher, 30% goes to Xbox. But in case of uh, Call of Duty, right now it is 80/20. So Activision takes 80% of all revenue, which is a really interesting preferential treatment that I haven't heard yet from any other third party. And as Sarah was saying, that it was clear that Call of Duty would be on PS5, and that would not have been good for Xbox, right? So they had to sign this deal of the 80/20 split, because Activision had already signed a deal with Sony. So all the games till 2023, all the Call of Duty games till 2023 have to launch on PlayStation, as they have the marketing rights and everything. So given all of that, Xbox lowered its revenue split because it believed that this content was critical for its platform, and without Call of Duty, Xbox might not have been very appealing to a lot of customers. And then moving on to next, the other point that FTC kept bringing up is cloud gaming, and how Xbox is way ahead of the competition in cloud gaming and they can become a monopoly. So on that aspect, Sarah Bond mentioned that Xbox Cloud Gaming is a feature right now and not a separate market. So it's just a feature. People mostly use it to try games before they install them on their consoles. Not a lot of Game Pass Ultimate players are actually using it on their phone. And but as she mentioned, it's a feature and a delivery mechanism, and most of our usage is on console right now. So it may be the Xbox One consoles or even Series XS. Like I use cloud gaming on a lot of my games, like the smaller games, indie games. I generally don't download because I'm always running out of space on my Xbox. Uh, Another thing that she mentioned is that they have continued to get more data about the success and popularity of xCloud. We've gotten more data on the cost related to it, and we have signed partnership with others who provide those services. So they are very open to other cloud platform providers like Boosteroid and NVIDIA GeForce Now. So all of these, they are very open to partnerships, and they're very open to having these games, all of their games available on competing platforms. So there shouldn't be any uh, competition issues. There shouldn't be any lessening of competition, which is what Judge Corley responded to and accepted when she denied the PI. All right. The the most shocking thing for me, not shocking, I should say, but like this has become real now, is that they're not that XCloud is not a profit making business for Xbox right now. For Microsoft, they are losing money on it. So Sarah Bond said that we get revenue from it, but when we look at all the numbers, the revenue that we get per minute, per hour from that is lower than the cost we get per minute per hour on that, which is not great, right? It's a cost negative business, and uh, therefore not a great point for FTC to fight on. But then FTC tried to spin it other way, that oh, it's not just cloud, it is more than that. It is like, if the competitor platforms want to want to stream PC games, they would need a Windows license. And Bond mentioned, no, you don't. You can stream PC games without a Windows license. And then FTC, referring to the NVIDIA deal, this agreement involves a license for the Windows, correct? And Bond mentioned that, yeah, that's my understanding. But that's all about, because GeForce Now actually uses Windows as their backend for all their streaming. So when Microsoft was signing a deal, they gave them a preferential rate for all the Windows licenses. So NVIDIA was actually the real winner with this acquisition. They got a new deal, they got a better rate. It's a win-win for them. Also, when Phil was talking about it, he mentioned that when a competitor is actively signing third party games to skip our platform, it became more important to us to secure third party games on our platform, inclusive of Call of Duty. He was talking about how they accepted a lower revenue share, and how they have to work like that, and they don't have an option, essentially. So Call of Duty is a very, very important IP, is all we have learned from this exercise. Everyone is fighting over Call of Duty. uh, I have never really focused on Call of Duty yet, but we have seen that Call of Duty has been one of the highest sellers every year, year after year, for so many years in a row. Obviously everyone wants a piece of the pie. Everyone wants to have exclusive things on them. Like PlayStation have had so many of these exclusive, right? So many player skins, so many betas that were like early access was available on PlayStation first, PlayStation exclusive campaigns and stuff. So that's what now they're trying to fight against, is they're saying Microsoft will do that. Microsoft will do what we have done in the past. And and the judge was not really having it. FTC was trying to make a case for Sony all the way, but they they were not very successful. All right, let's move on ahead. All right, talking about being third place, Microsoft, when we were talking to Phil in this testimony, they were very focused on Nintendo. Like Nintendo, he mentioned that he has been receiving Nintendo's data uh, active user data, sales data in his reviews when he is reviewing console sales. So Xbox really considers Nintendo as one of the competitors. Sony doesn't, and hence FTC doesn't consider Nintendo as a competitor to Xbox and and to PlayStation. And it was all a play for that. And that's what Phil said, that it's incorrect to say that Nintendo isn't a competitor. He goes on to expand on that and says that the Switch was designed for people to take take on the go. So it's a different design concept, but still a console. Whereas Xbox One consoles require you to have plugged into a wall, don't have a screen. Nintendo built a different platform, a more portable platform, which can still be docked with your TV using a dock, obviously, and you can still play console games on your couch with the Nintendo Switch, and that way it is actually a competitor. When you go to Best Buy or Amazon to buy a console, you look at Nintendo Switch before you buy. Maybe the games that you play define what you are going to buy or portability, but you you really look at Nintendo Switch. At least I do. Now let me know down in the comments if you think any different. All right. The reality is that Nintendo Switch is still a game console. It can play some of the games that Xbox Series X and PS5 also play, just at a lower quality, maybe a lower resolution, lower frame rate. But a lot of games that play on Series X and S and PS5 also play on Switch. Fortnite is a great example. The mechanism is exactly the same. Apex is a good example, I believe. Yeah, you can play Apex on it's a competitive game, right? You are playing against Xbox and PS5 players, and you're still playing it on Switch. The experience is not great. It's 30 FPS locked, and it even dips lower than that, but you can still play. The next thing that Phil was talking about is that Xbox has lost the console wars, and its rivals are positioned to continue to dominate, including by leveraging exclusive content. So both Nintendo and Sony have a lot more exclusive content, a lot more exclusive games, and Microsoft is trying to compete, but it's not necessarily going its way, and they have really lost the console wars. And when the FTC lawyer tried to poke uh, Phil with it, he mentioned that console wars is a social construct with the community. I would never want to count the community out. So they're big fans like us, like you and me. And Spencer answered carefully. He said, if you look at our market share in the console space over the 20 plus years, we have been in third place. We are behind Sony and Nintendo in the console share globally. That's by the number of consoles sold, which is very true. Another thing that Phil was talking about is every time they ship a game on PlayStation, Sony captures 30% of the revenue and that we do on their platform. And when they use the money, and then they use that money among with other revenues to go and sign all of these exclusive deals and make life difficult for Xbox, which is not really great for Xbox if they're shipping games and then Sony is using that money to actually get a better deal out of some other consumer, some other developer. That's not great. And he mentions that we have been trying to compete, but as I said, over the last 20 years, we have failed to do so effectively. And then FTC's lawyer went on a weird trajectory. So your business is not necessarily meeting its internal targets today, right? So obviously, yeah, today with the majority of our business residing at the third place console business, we are not a robust business. So Phil is trying to make his case. Yeah, we are not a robust business. We don't have a lot of margin. We need to buy Activision and Blizzard to strengthen our situation, make good cash flow, positive cash flow, and make our business more viable. And then he goes on and pivots about mobile. So the deal, as we have talked about, expands our business to the mobile platforms. The existing console business is a very difficult business to drive profit and margin. So the opportunity for us to expand in any meaningful way is on to mobile. the world's largest gaming platform. And that was a strategic and business opportunity behind this deal. In the US and Europe, mobile gaming is not very popular, but if you look at India and China, they play a lot of mobile games. Like, yeah, a lot of my friends back in India, they play PUBG and Call of Duty on phones, and that's all they play. And they spend so much money on microtransactions, and Krafton and Activision makes a ton of money from them. And that's the real growth, because console sales are flatlining. They are not. That's not, console is not a business that's going up. We are not selling two times the console they sold in the previous generation or any of that. So mobile is where the money is at, and that's why you see that Apple, even though they don't make any game, they're one of the top gaming earners by revenue, because of the 30% cut on the App Store. That is. All right. Moving on to the next topic that Phil mentioned was that Sony has a significant catalog of exclusive games. It's drastically larger, dramatically larger than what we have on Xbox today. Both Sony and Nintendo's first party is stronger than Xbox. So he's trying to make his case that even though we are acquiring all of these studios and we might make a few more exclusive games, we will still have less exclusive games than our competitors. And Phil also mentioned that Sony is the market leader with a considerable capability and an aggressive competitor. They have gone out of their way to make all of these deals with the third parties. Like, as I mentioned, we know all the Activision Blizzard deals. We know about Final Fantasy 7 and Final Fantasy 16. All of these games were supposed to be multi-platform, but uh, PlayStation signed a deal with Square Enix and made all of these exclusives. So no luck for us anymore. All right, looking at the market shares currently, this is Gen 8 and Gen 9. So PlayStation 4 plus PlayStation 5 combined, PlayStation has is first place with 155.6 million in sales. Nintendo is second place with 139.18 million in sales, and Xbox is a distant third with 79 million in sales. So I know this looks very grim, and it's like Xbox is half the market share of PlayStation, and that's why Microsoft and Xbox are trying to pivot into mobile, into PC, and into cloud. And that's why they're seeing that, oh, console is not where we will grow. We'll grow in all of these other sectors. And what do we need for that? We need these King and these smaller studios that are very good at mobile games. So that's where they're coming from. All right. And then there was this weird line of questioning that I didn't really understand what FTC was trying to get. FTC, if Microsoft is going to grow, particularly in a business like console, it can grow by taking share from its competitors, right? Spencer, there is no console growth in our deal model. FTC, do you have any intention of this deal helping you climb out of that number three spot? Spencer, in the console market, no, we do not. And then FTC is like, oh, so this is a write off? This is a $70 billion write off? And Spencer is like, I don't understand how it's a write off. I have been telling you, this is all about mobile. We are going to make Xbox Mobile Store that is going to be a competitor for App Store and Play Store based on that EU ruling. So they can put out a third competing App Store on the phones and ship their games through that. And that's all this is about. And the FTC lawyer came back again. If you would make a decision that would benefit Microsoft and harm Microsoft competitor in any of the markets we have been discussing, that would be good for Microsoft gaming numbers, right? And then Phil was like, we're trying to compete in the market by growing our business. Some of our business growth is obviously growth that our competitors would like to have. So in the end, our growth is probably from some of our competitors not realizing their growth themselves, but we are not trying to steal customers away from any other. It's not like because Activision is now owned by Xbox, everyone is going to just throw away their PlayStation 5s and just jump onto Xbox. That's not realistic, and that's what they're trying to make a case for. And while Phil was talking about acquisitions and how that makes a big deal, he talked about Starfield, right? And how Starfield made Microsoft actually acquire ZeniMax. So when we acquired ZeniMax, one of the impetus of that is that Sony had done a deal for Ghostwire and Deathloop to pay Bethesda to not ship these games on Xbox. So the discussion about Starfield, when we heard that Starfield was potentially also going to end up skipping Xbox, we can't be in that position as a third place console, right? If you are a third place console, you want these big exclusive. If you have these big exclusives not even showing up, or showing up like 2 years late, you are going to stay behind. And that's why we can't be in a position as a third place console where we fall further behind to our on our content ownership. So we had to secure content to remain viable in the business, and that's why we bought ZeniMax. And so basically, Sony doing these deals with Deathloop and Ghostwire and trying to make Starfield a PlayStation exclusive, that made Xbox actually just go ahead and buy the entire publisher, ZeniMax. And as we've seen, a lot of Bethesda and ZeniMax games are going exclusive. But that's not going to be the case with Activision, because Activision is too big and they would lose a lot of money if they try to make it uh, exclusive. All right, Call of Duty back again. Then the lawyer tried to have Phil swear on oath, like swear, swear under oath. Like, can you swear under oath that you promise that you'll ship Call of Duty on PlayStation without looking at the terms? And Phil was like, yeah, I'm going to ship Call of Duty on PlayStation 5. And after lunch, he came back like, yeah, I'm not trying to fool anyone. I'm not saying it just PlayStation 5. Any PlayStation out there, we are going to ship Call of Duty on any PlayStation. That is my goal. And if you're trying to propose, if what you're trying to propose is that Sony might change the terms on how we ship games on our platform, then that would prohibit us from shipping games on their platform. So they're like, okay, obviously, if Sony says that we're going to give you 0% market share and we want all 100% of it, we're not going to ship those games, right? So then we cannot sign a deal saying that we are going to ship anyways. We obviously have to make a viable deal, and uh, we cannot change terms just because Sony likes them. So that's all that we heard from Phil. There are a lot of other stuff as well. So we are already at a 40-minute mark, so I'm gonna try to speed up so I don't end up with the first episode that's 2 hours long. I'll try to wrap it in about an hour. So let's speed through the next few topics. The number one topic that uh, Jim Ryan talked about is like how all these publishers that have put their games on Game Pass, they actually hate Game Pass. So he's mentioned that I talked to the publishers and they unanimously do not like Xbox Game Pass because it's value destructive. The Game Pass business model appears to have some challenges, and Microsoft appears to be losing a lot of money on it. So they're just trying to say that Microsoft is not doing Game Pass to actually make a profit. They're just doing to cannibalize the competition and make people switch to Xboxes. That was what he was trying to say. Like, yeah, if you put Call of Duty on Game Pass, it's kind of an exclusive, and people would prefer to get it there because they would rather pay the subscription than have to buy the game outright, and that will be value destructive. It will be value destructive for PlayStation, but I'm not sure it will be value destructive for Xbox. And there are so many of these publishers that keep putting their games on Xbox, and they have seen good revenue. And like GTA 5 has been on Game Pass 3 times now. Red Dead Redemption has been there. Like all these Paradox games, like City Skylines, have stayed on the service forever, and City Skyline 2 is launching onto the service. So I'm pretty sure they're making a profit there, and they're very happy with the arrangement that they have, the market share that they get, and the revenue that they get from Game Pass. This is just Jim Ryan trying to make a statement. All right. The next thing we learned was that Sony was wary of sharing their dev kits for future consoles like the PS5 with Microsoft to build games like Minecraft or potentially now Call of Duty, because Call of Duty is now under Microsoft. So they won't want to share their development kits because that would might be allow Xbox to reverse engineer their competitors' console and try to get an upper hand and modify their consoles to be one step beyond PlayStation 6, which doesn't make sense really, because what about Xbox now? Because MLB's The Show is available on Xbox, and it is also available on PS5, and it is made by a PS5 studio. It is made by a PlayStation studio. So is Microsoft now not gonna send the Xbox Series X2 or XL, whatever it ends up being the next generation? Are they not going to send dev kits to Sony? And yeah, we also learned about we also learned about the that Sony delayed the PS5 dev kits to Mojang, and hence we don't have I think we still don't have a PS5 optimized version of Minecraft yet. And they said that we simply could not run the risk of a company that owned our direct competitor from having access to that information being their next gen console and the dev kit, which is which would mean that maybe Call of Duty, when PS6 launches, the Call of Duty that will come on PlayStation might not be optimized. But now Xbox has promised parity, so they will maybe try to emulate it on Xbox and do something like that. But I'm not sure how they are going to optimize the game for PS6 if they are not provided with the PS6 dev kits. Another thing that was mentioned during this testimony is that the development kits allow developers to have visibility and to work on feature sets that these new consoles will deploy. For example, all of these shaders and ray tracing that the PS5 and Xbox Series X and S can do, it was not possible on Xbox One. So if a developer is developing on an Xbox One or a PS4, he can never really tap into these new features unless he has a dev kit. So delaying dev kits would mean a developer may bring its content to the new platform later than would have otherwise in the case. The commercial risk associated with the knowledge of these feature sets leaking to our principal competitor is not something we can rely on any contract to enforce. So Jim Ryan is not, he doesn't believe in NDAs. He doesn't believe that if Mojang signs an NDA about all of these properties that the PS6 dev kit has, that they're not going to channel it back to Microsoft somehow, which is kind of absurd. I'm pretty sure if you sign an NDA, you go by it. You don't break the NDAs. I have signed a lot of NDAs. I've worked on a lot of hardware in my day job, which is everything that I work on is under NDA, and I'm working on stuff that is 2-3 years out in the future, and I've never talked about what I have been working on to anyone. Um, Even like friends and family, I've not talked to them about what I'm really working on because I'm on an NDA. All right, yeah. Jim also mentioned that one of the reasons that why they are investing massively in first-party content and publishing is to provide us with an edge against pressure on the historic business model. The historic business model being sell the game at $80 or £80 each instead of putting it on a subscription service. So they're saying that Jim was saying that they're trying to fight against this multi-game subscription model that is Game Pass, and for that they're acquiring more studios so that they can bolster their first-party development. They're pumping more money, more resources on all of these first-party businesses, so they can have a great content that these multi-game subscriptions, that is Game Pass, can't compete against. So going on further, there was the Microsoft lawyer tried to like give a hypothetical to Jim, like, do you think it would be better if Microsoft kept Activision's game on PlayStation. He's like, yes, I do. So do you believe that it is Microsoft's best interest to make make Activision games available on multiple platforms? And he was like, no, I don't agree with that. So he's like, so if you were running Xbox, would you recommend making Call of Duty and other Activision exclusive to PlayStation, to Xbox and PC? And he's like, oh, that's a hypothetical question. Hypothetical question. I don't wish to answer it, but we all know, all of us know, if Call of Duty was, if Activision was being acquired by PlayStation, there was no chance that Call of Duty would be cross-platform. I don't know how they let Destiny be like Bungie be a cross-platform developer. Maybe because all of their games are live service, and live service games need the larger the user base, the better, right? We have seen with Xbox's Halo Infinite, like the player base is dwindling. It's not as big as Apex or even PUBG these days. Like Halo Infinite has a very small user base compared to what it used to be at launch. There has been like a 98% dip in the in the user base, which is not great. But if it was available on multiple platforms, there would have been a higher user base today. So everyone wants to keep all of their live service games on multi-platform. But if if Sony was going to acquire Activision, I'm pretty sure all of the Call of Duty games would have been exclusive to PlayStation. So Microsoft lawyer was like, "Oh, so you don't want to, so you don't get to answer?" And Ryan was like, "I don't have enough knowledge to answer that question," because obviously he didn't want to come up and say like, "Yeah, I would have made that exclusive," and then FTC wouldn't have a have a leg to stand on. All right, moving on to this guy that we all don't want to talk about, Bobby Kotick, CEO of Activision Blizzard. One of the favorite statements that he gave, though, is like, playing Modern Warfare 2 on a phone would be like using a refrigerator as a safe. Well, I found that very funny. That's why I've included it. No reference here. That was all talking about trying to play Call of Duty on mobile, because uh, that's what Microsoft has been pushing for, that this deal is all about mobile. So, what were the major topics that we talked about with Mr. Kotick? I hope he gets pushed out as soon as this deal closes. I don't know. He'll make a ton of money still. He owns a lot of Activision shares. So, but let's go talk about Call of Duty. Why isn't Call of Duty exclusive to a single platform? And he said, like, yeah, you would have a revolt if you were to remove this game from one platform. Gamers are incredibly passionate. You get invested in the experience. It's like a sports. You would alienate 100 million active monthly users, which is not great, and everyone will be furious at Activision Blizzard or Microsoft, whoever did it, and the negative press will be way too much for them to even go against. Kotick also mentioned that when he was asked about Switch, he was like, "Oh yeah, he regrets not bringing Call of Duty to Switch. It was like, I made a bad judgment. It is probably the second biggest video game system of all time, which is true." Another thing that came across from Bobby's statement is like, Activision isn't really interested in Xbox Game Pass. I have a general aversion of to the idea of multi-game subscription services. Maybe part of it is being in Los Angeles and having this large big media companies move content to their subscription streaming services, and the business results have suffered. Generally speaking, I don't believe that a multi-subscription service for games is the best way to enable uh, to enable players to make their investment. So, talking about Game Pass, Bobby Kotick doesn't really like Game Pass. He doesn't want to put any of his games on Game Pass, but I'm pretty sure games like Diablo 4 and Crash and other stuff that is made by Activision Blizzard King are going to be uh, on Game Pass now. Maybe they also have a few PlayStation Plus deals, like we saw Call of Duty just arrived on PlayStation Plus recently. So he doesn't really like multi-game subscription, and he's comparing it to say Paramount Plus and HBO Max and other Disney Plus, who are losing a lot of money right now, and they have to get to a critical mass before they start making that money, and they're not making that money right now. And I think Microsoft might have to stake their way. Like today only Netflix is cash flow positive. All the other streaming services are cash flow negative, and that's why you see so much of the content being removed from all of these platforms. And all Bobby Kotick wants to do is stay away from that, stay very, very, very far away from that. So, yeah, with this deal closing, though, I'm pretty sure we'll see Diablo 4 and all of these pretty looking games come on Game Pass, and all of us Game Pass subscriber will eat good. All right, let's move on to the next major thing, that is Microsoft's acquisition watch list. And we learned we had heard so many rumors of Microsoft trying to acquire Sega, and it is confirmed in this email that we see from Phil. He says that we believe that Sega has built a well balanced portfolio of games across segments with global geographic appeal and will help us accelerate Xbox Game Pass again, both on and off console. Please find the attached memo and bulletins and everything. And like they talk about the operating income of 900 million of revenue, 60 to 90 million of operating income in each of Sega's 3 fiscal years. And they really wanted to acquire Sega, but then Zenimax became available, and they were at the right time, so they just went ahead acquired that. And since they announced this Activision Blizzard deal, they were very focused on closing this deal. It has taken them almost a year and a half now, and finally it might be closing soon. We still don't know if it is closing anytime soon. FTC can still appeal against this judgment. They have until Friday to appeal against this. But looking at that, CMA is now trying to get a deal from Microsoft. Maybe FTC comes back and tries to get something like that. But with their PI being denied initially, I don't think they have a leg to stand on. All right. Another thing that we learned from this redacted document is they are prioritizing acquisition target. The target is PC in North America and Europe, mobile in North America and Europe, and console and PC in Asia Pacific. So by looking at these strategies, they build a list of a lot of companies that they wanted to acquire, and there was a final watch list of Xbox game studios. They were divided into categories like audience expansion and engagement and social interaction. So there's Thunderful, the studio behind, what games did Thunderful make? Like the Gunk, one of Xbox Game Pass games. It was a really cute game, and they also make mobile games. There's Supergiant Games that made Hades. There's Niantic that made Pokemon Go. Playrix, Zynga was another that they tried to acquire, but then they thought that their mobile presence was not as big to push the Xbox Game Pass onto mobile. They wanted to create a mobile-only Xbox Game Pass queue. Maybe they will do one now that the deal is almost approved, and if they close the deal, maybe you won't have to see all those annoying ads on Candy Crush Saga. All right, other big companies that they wanted to acquire was Bungie. Bungie, IO Interactive, Scopy, all of these are like very big AAA franchise owners, and Bungie might have come back to Xbox, and we might have another great Halo C like game from Bungie. But alas, Bungie had to go to Sony because Microsoft was spending all their time and effort at acquiring Activision Blizzard. Another one of the another studio was Square Enix, which is very funny because Microsoft had a number of reasons for being interested in Square Enix. Part of it was to bolster bolster Xbox's historically scant presence in the Asian market. So Asia Pacific, Xbox is non-existent. Even in India now with Game Pass and Series S, they're gaining some ground, but still PS5 is outselling 3-1 or maybe 4-1 in these regions. Japan is another story. It's like 20-1. So they were also looking at future mobile exclusive Game Pass offerings, like previous games like Final Fantasy 4, 5, 6, 7, and all of those games are ported to mobile, and then you can, as they are mentioning that they're looking to combine Square Enix's uh, robust mobile native portfolio with our own could potential help us create a mobile native Xbox Game Pass SKU. So they wanted to create a mobile native SKU because mobile is the growth driver. So they can have all of these new games, like basically ported old games that now the Samsung Galaxies and the iPhones are capable of running. That were basically Xbox 360 or PS2 games, PS3 games, and now they can run on their phones. If they can get a Game Pass subscription going on mobile, like what you see today with maybe with Netflix. If you have a Netflix subscription, you have access to all of these new games. Like one of the favorite games I played recently was Raji and 12 Minutes. Raji and Ancient Epic. It's an Indian game built by Indian developers based on an Indian mythological story. And then 12 Minutes was another very interesting game. Both of them were initially available on Game Pass. I didn't have time to play them at that point, but I was on this long flight to China for work, and then I played both of these games through my Netflix subscription. So if Microsoft can make a mobile exclusive Xbox Game Pass SKU, I'm pretty sure it would be a hit, especially in Indian and Asian markets where there are a lot of people who are spending money on these microtransactions for PUBG and other games. They might jump in and get the subscription and play these story-driven games. All right, we are in the final stretch now. We have already crossed our 1 hour mark, so I won't hold you guys any longer. Well, just a little bit longer. One of the funniest thing that happened was that someone at Sony messed up and they forgot how to redact. They just used a black sharpie to redact a lot of stuff, and when the document was scanned, you can essentially see everything. If you look at this, you can essentially see all the details. You can make out all of these numbers. So, what did we learn from that? We learned that Horizon Forbidden West cost $212 million to make. Took over 5 years for them to make Horizon Forbidden West with 300 employees. The Last of Us 2, which is a beautiful, beautiful game, The Last of Us 2 took $220 million to make and around 200 employees. That's a large development cycle, a lot of money. That's why you cannot expect a new developer to come in and make a AAA game. I know a lot of people debate that Microsoft is not organically developing studios, they're acquiring studios. There's a reason for that. If they develop a new studios, you'll see results like 8 years, 10 years down the line, which is never great. Also, the other stuff that were accidentally left unredacted is in 2021, over 14 million users spent 30% or more of their time on the PlayStation just playing Call of Duty. And over 6 million users spend more than 70% of their time on Call of Duty. And there were even 1 million users that spent 100% of their time gaming on Call of Duty. Now we understand why Sony is so mad at Xbox acquiring Activision, because all of these huge numbers and huge engagements that they were seeing, and they had this preferential treatment going with Activision and preferential deal, and now they're going to miss out on all of that. They cannot go ahead and sign a deal with Activision anymore. Another thing we learned was Call of Duty represented 800 million in PlayStation revenue in US alone, and about 1.5 billion worldwide. Now you know why Microsoft is spending like 69 billion on them. That's just 2021. So in a year they had a 1.5 billion revenue on one game. Just good numbers, man. Really good numbers. All right, we'll go past Last of Us. Oops. What's oh yeah. I forgot I totally forgot about this. We had really nice interviews kind of like with Satya. Satya Nadella, the CEO of Microsoft, was present in court in person to testify. And he mentioned, like, when asked like about exclusives, was like, if it was up to me, I would love to get rid of exclusives altogether. He has no love for the for I have no love for the world. And he's like, okay, being a low market, a low share player in the console market, which is driven by the dominant player, that is Sony, and they have defined the market competition with exclusives. So Xbox has to compete with exclusives. Otherwise, they're going to stay in third place, and that's why they have exclusive. Otherwise, Nadella would just want to get rid of all of this. And then Microsoft lawyer was trying to like get the Microsoft lawyer was trying to make his case, and he asked like, will Microsoft forego sales of Call of Duty on PlayStation by withholding access? Nadella was like, no, it makes no economic sense or no strategic sense. Our goal with Activision is, in particular, in their content, and our content is to get it to more platform. That's what we have done with Office and what I want to do with gaming. So Nadella's basic philosophy at Microsoft has been cloud first, mobile first. That's what he did with everything. He did that with Azure, he did that with Office. Now that's what he says he wants to do with mobile and gaming. So I think if it was up to Nadella, he'll make all the games available everywhere. Halo will be on PlayStation, and Halo will be on Nintendo Switch. But Halo, Gears, Forza, everything. But then the then the Microsoft lawyer came back. Another question: will you commit to continue delivering Call of Duty to PlayStation? And he was like, 100%. I am committing to that. So we have Phil Spencer saying we are committing 100% Call of Duty on PlayStation. We have Nadella testifying under oath that we have Call of Duty on 100%. That basically broke FTC's back, and that's why they didn't really have a chance at winning this case. All right, let's keep going forward. Another thing, yeah, I don't think of it as strictly a substitute for console. I mean, at least the market feedback to date has been people love their console, people love their PC, people love their phones, and use cloud gaming as an adjunct. This is when he was talking about cloud gaming, and if it's a different category that needs to be defined. FTC was trying to define cloud gaming as a different category, as CMA has done. As CMA's restriction is like, oh, Microsoft might have a monopoly in cloud gaming. That's why we are blocking your deal. So that's what Nadella was talking about. Like, it's not a substitute. It's a feature. It's it's not it's not basically a substitute for anything. You just maybe try it for a bit. And he also mentioned that streaming is a minor part of definition of cloud. He tried to like just throw away the FTC lawyer like in circles, and like he's like, oh, when I talk about cloud, streaming is just a minor portion of it. It also includes Xbox Live. Just to be sure, just to be clear, whenever I think about cloud in context of Xbox pillar of content, cloud, and community, Xbox Live is part of the cloud. I don't understand what really means by that. Is like the Xbox Live subscription, that's part of the cloud, or what is it trying to get out of it, or is it just a statement to win the case? I'm not very sure what he meant by that. So he continues, so even when you're thinking about a console or a PC, the cloud is actually very integral to the experience. You're not just streaming alone when I think about cloud. So maybe he's talking about all of these play anywhere games where you can use the cloud to have your save files. So you play on a console, pick up on PC, and your save files continue. When you're playing on a device like the ROG Ally, the Asus ROG Ally. That's really great. If you have the storage on cloud, you have all your save games on cloud, and if it's a play anywhere title, you don't have to worry about starting again and just continue the game on the go. So that's all we learned from Nadella's testimony. Next up was Microsoft CFO. When she was talking about making the possibility of Call of Duty exclusive to Xbox, she said that it was never even assessed or discussed with me, nor was it even mentioned in any of the presentations to or discussion with the board of directors. So Call of Duty, the plan from day zero was to keep it multi-platform. There was no talk ever to make it exclusive. I know a lot of Xbox fanboys would like it to be exclusive, but it doesn't make real sense, real economical sense for them. And she goes on to mention, I understand the necessity of keeping Call of Duty on other platforms. The acquisition strategic rationale and financial valuations are both aligned towards making Activision games more widely available, not less. So we are spending $69 billion on it. We need to make that money back. And if we start making all of these high selling games exclusive, we're going to lose a lot of money on it. And the cash flow will still stay negative. We don't want to do that. She continues on this track. She's like, Xbox has historically had a low operating margin. Profits have been low for Xbox and Microsoft's other lines of businesses like Azure or Office or even Windows. So over time, we are striving to increase Xbox's operating margin to bring it closer to the other lines of business, and that's why we are acquiring Activision Blizzard, making all their games available at more places so we can make more money and make Xbox more profitable. And the final testimony that's worth noting was Tim Stewart's, the Xbox CMO. He mentioned that we want that content in the long run to be either first or better or best, and pick your designated experience on other platforms. That's when he's talking about Activision Blizzard. He was like, we want these content to be either first, better, or best on our platform. And then you can choose to do that at anywhere else. We will want Bethesda content to show up the best on our platform. Sorry, he was talking about Bethesda, not Activision Blizzard. My bad, I misspoke. But yeah, so he said the Bethesda content should show up best on our platform. It might be available on other platforms, but it should either be first, better, or best, and have a differentiated experience on our platforms. And another thing that came out of these documents is one of the statements is like, Phil decided in 2021 that all future Bethesda content is Xbox exclusive. So there is no case by case basis. There is nothing that this game is going to be exclusive, that game is exclusive. No, not just new IP, but all games going forward. Wow, that's his statement. He mentioned to Matt Booty, I believe. That was a team's message that he sent. But yeah, Phil decided that all Bethesda games are exclusive now. And full exclusivity would, when talking about the Activision Blizzard deal, he mentioned that full exclusivity would impact the deal valuation. And when discussing these options, Xbox CMO, said there would be significant upset to the full exclusive, and there's an admission that some leaders at Bethesda won't happy seeing games being cut from PlayStation. Like we have seen these emails between Phil and Pete Hines, when Pete Hines was like, "Oh, why are we being treated differently than Activision Blizzard? All of our content you mentioned was going to be exclusive to Xbox, but at the same time you're letting Activision Blizzard be multi-platform. Why is that?" And then Phil was like, "Yeah, we made that decision." So a few people at Bethesda were not happy with it, but still, that's all the major learnings from this case. I hope you guys enjoyed this podcast, the first episode of many of the Xbox podcast. If you guys enjoyed this video, please don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. Helps us out a ton. And if you are listening to this podcast on an audio platform, please consider bookmarking us and leaving us a review. And if you have any comments, concerns, anything, if you have any constructive criticism of my setup, my performance, my delivery, please let me know in the comments. I would try to improve on all of them. And I hope you guys enjoyed it. Please don't forget to hit that like and subscribe button. It helps us out a ton. Send this video out to your Xbox friends. Maybe they will enjoy it, and we'll make this podcast successful together. Once again, this is the Xbox Show, and I am your host Abhishek, and that's episode 1 of the Xbox Show podcast.
Hi, I'm Phil, and welcome to the Xbox Show.